On her 23rd birthday, a millionaire's deaf daughter sat completely alone in a crowded Nashville café, quietly signing happy birthday to herself, while a perfect slice of cake remained untouched in front of her. Surrounded by the city's elite, none of whom spoke her language, Vanessa Carter carried on a silent conversation no one else could hear. Then a single father named Daniel Miller noticed her hands, recognized the signs, and made a choice that would break 19 years of silence between a daughter and the man who loved her. What happened next didn't just change one birthday, transformed the lives of 3 people who thought they were beyond repair. The afternoon heat in downtown Nashville was suffocating, but inside the Boulevard Café, the air conditioning made the room almost chilly. Daniel Miller wasn't supposed to be there. He'd promised his 8-year-old son, Liam, that they'd be at the park by now. But a client had insisted on meeting at this overpriced coffee shop, where a simple latte cost more than most people's lunch. That's when he saw her. She sat at a corner table by the window, where the natural light created a halo around her blonde hair. Designer dress, pearl earrings, everything about her screamed money. But her hands were having a conversation in the air. She was signing happy birthday to me. The signs were unmistakable. Daniel's chest tightened as he watched her fingers move with practiced precision, each gesture a word spoken into silence. There was a resignation in her movements, the slight slump of her shoulders with each sign. This wasn't celebration. This was surrender. A waiter came to her table and said something, gesturing awkwardly toward the untouched birthday cake. Vanessa pointed to her ears, shook her head, then scribbled something on a napkin. The waiter nodded, clearly uncomfortable, and retreated. The pattern was so familiar, it made Daniel's stomach knot. The cake had a single candle. Vanessa traced her finger along the edge of the plate, her lips moving as she read the cursive chocolate lettering. Happy 23rd birthday, Vanessa. A man in an expensive suit stopped by her table. Daniel watched as the man waved enthusiastically, his mouth moving in exaggerated shapes, the way people do when they think speaking louder or more dramatically might somehow break through deafness. Vanessa smiled, that polite, practiced smile that never reached her eyes, and nodded. The man patted her shoulder and walked away, probably feeling proud of his 30-second performance of being nice. Daniel's hands moved on their own, starting to sign Ben before he caught himself. His younger brother had been dead for 5 years, but muscle memory didn't care about grief. Some habits were carved too deep to fade. Another person stopped by Vanessa's table, this time a woman dripping in jewelry. More overdramatic mouth movements, another awkward pat, another retreat. Vanessa was like an exhibit in a museum. Beautiful deaf girl. Circa 2024. Please admire, but do not attempt meaningful interaction. Daniel was on his feet before his brain could talk him out of it. His client would be there in 10 minutes, but the way she was signing to herself, over and over like a mantra, pulled him forward. "Excuse me," he signed as he approached. Vanessa's hands froze mid-gesture. Her eyes widened, scanning his face like she was trying to solve a puzzle. For a moment, neither of them moved. "I don't mean to intrude," he continued in sign. "But, happy birthday." The change was instant. Her composed mask cracked, and something raw and desperate flashed across her features. Her hands trembled as she replied, "You sign." "My brother was deaf," Daniel signed, then immediately regretted the past tense. But Vanessa was already pulling out the chair across from her, her movements urgent, almost frantic. "Please," she signed. "Sit, please." Daniel glanced at his phone. His client would be there any minute, but the look in Vanessa's eyes, like someone drowning who'd just been thrown a rope, made the decision for him. "I'm Daniel," he signed as he sat. "Vanessa." Her hands flew now like a dam had burst. I haven't signed with someone in." She paused, calculating. 3 months, maybe 4. "But your family?" he asked. "My father." Vanessa gave a bitter little laugh, a sound she probably couldn't fully hear herself. "Robert Carter doesn't do sign language. He does business deals and charity galas and expensive gifts." She gestured at her dress. "This cost $3,000. You know what I would have traded it for. One happy birthday in sign language from him." Daniel's phone buzzed. His client. He silenced it without looking. "How long have you been deaf?" He signed. "Since I was 4. Meningitis." Her signs were matter-of-fact, practiced. This was clearly a story she'd told too many times. "My father's solution was to throw money at it. Best doctors, best hearing aids, best schools, everything. But actually learning how to talk to me, That must be, Daniel began. Lonely, Vanessa finished. You have no idea. Or, maybe you do. She studied his face. You said your brother was deaf. The question hung between them. Daniel's hands hesitated, then formed words he rarely signed to anyone. He died 5 years ago. Drowning accident. Not because he was deaf. He had a heart condition we didn't know about. Vanessa's expression softened. I'm sorry. How long have you been signing? 20 years. Since Ben was born. Daniel's mouth quirked at the memory. He was 16 years younger than me. Our parents were overwhelmed, so I became his translator, his protector, his bridge to the hearing world. Sign language was our secret language, even after he learned to read lips. And now, Vanessa asked, now I sign 2 empty rooms sometimes, Daniel admitted. I rehearse conversations with someone who never answers. He hadn't meant to say that, but something about Vanessa's quiet presence made honesty feel necessary. I sign to myself all the time, she replied. Full conversations, arguments with my father where I actually get to say how I feel. Jokes no one laughs at, dreams no one ever hears about. She paused. This is the most I've actually communicated with someone in months. Just then, Daniel's client, Jason Cole, walked in full business suit and impatience. He spotted Daniel and headed over, irritation already written on his face. I have to. Daniel started to sign, but Vanessa had seen Jason too. Your meeting, she signed, withdrawing slightly. I understand. Daniel was already standing, intercepting Jason halfway. Family emergency, he said out loud, not caring that it was technically a lie. We'll have to reschedule. Jason's face flushed red, but Daniel was already walking back to Vanessa, whose eyes were wide with disbelief. You just dropped your client, she signed. We'll survive, Daniel replied, sitting back down. Tell me about your birthday. Why are you alone? Vanessa's hands moved slowly at first, like she was testing whether this was real. My father's in Tokyo, she signed. Big business deal. He sent this cake. Had his secretary arranged for it to be delivered here. This cafe, this is where he brings his business associates. I think he thought being here would feel like being with him, but it doesn't. It feels like being a prop in someone else's life. She shook her head slightly. You know what's funny? He built a real estate empire. His entire fortune is built on communication, convincing people, negotiating, connecting. But after 19 years, he's never learned my language. Daniel thought of Ben, of how their parents had struggled but tried, how he'd stepped in to fill those gaps. Maybe he's afraid. Daniel signed what Vanessa's signs were sharp, of not being good enough, of failing you more than he thinks he already has. Vanessa stared at him for a long moment. You don't know Robert Carter, she signed. Failure isn't in his vocabulary, neither is vulnerability. I'm guessing, Daniel replied. That made her pause. Her hands dropped to her lap, and he watched her actually consider the possibility. Tell me about your son, she signed, changing the subject. You mentioned promising him something, Liam. He's 8. We were supposed to go to the park, but, Daniel gestured around the cafe, and you chose to sit with a stranger instead, she signed. You looked like you needed a conversation more than he needed the swings, he answered. What about his mother? Daniel's hands stilled. She left when Liam was 2. Said she couldn't handle being a parent. Sometimes she sends birthday cards when she remembers. So you understand, Vanessa signed, being abandoned by someone who's supposed to love you unconditionally. It's different, Daniel replied. Your father is still here. Is he? She signed. Physical presence isn't the same as being present. At least your ex was honest enough to leave. The honesty was brutal, but Daniel couldn't argue with it. He'd spent years angry at Amy for walking out, but at least Liam didn't have to watch her fail to connect every day. Would you like to meet him? Daniel found himself signing. Liam, I mean. I could teach him to sign happy birthday. The hope that bloomed on Vanessa's face was almost painful. You'd do that. He had been asking about sign language anyway. He saw me signing to myself once, and was fascinated. You could bring him here tomorrow, she signed, then quickly backtracked. Sorry, that's presumptuous. You probably have. Tomorrow's perfect, Daniel interrupted. Same time. Vanessa nodded, and for the first time since he'd approached, she smiled. A real smile that lit up her whole face. As Daniel finally pulled out his phone and saw Jason's angry texts, Vanessa signed one more thing. Thank you for seeing me. Not as the deaf girl, not as the millionaire's daughter, just me, Vanessa. That's all I saw from the beginning, Daniel signed back. Walking to his car, Daniel thought of Ben, of all the years of signing that had felt like they'd died with his brother. Maybe they hadn't been wasted. Maybe they'd been preparing him for this moment, this woman, this connection. Across the cafe window, Vanessa watched him go, her hands unconsciously signing his name, Daniel. The first person in years who had chosen her company over something else, who saw her isolation and stepped into it, instead of politely walking around it. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Happy birthday, sweetheart. The cake should have arrived. Sorry, I couldn't be there. The Tokyo deal is important for our future." She typed back, "Met someone today who speaks my language." His reply was predictably tone-deaf. "Excellent. Networking is important. What company does he work for?" She didn't respond. How could she explain that Daniel's value had nothing to do with networking and everything to do with how he simply saw her? The next day, Daniel arrived with Liam in tow. The boy was practically vibrating with excitement, his small hands already attempting the signs Daniel had taught him in the car. "Is that her?" Liam asked aloud, pointing through the window. "Yes," Daniel said. "But remember what we talked about." Liam was already bursting through the door, marching up to Vanessa with the fearless confidence only kids possess. Yesterday, Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. She glanced at Daniel, who shrugged apologetically. "He practiced all night." Daniel signed, "It's perfect," she replied, then turned to Liam with slower, clearer signs. "Hello, Liam. Thank you. Want to learn more?" For the next 2 hours, Vanessa taught Liam signs, while Daniel translated context aloud when needed. Liam was a quick learner, his excitement infectious. Other patrons stared, some smiled, but Vanessa didn't notice. Her world had shrunk to this table, this man, this child. People who were willing to step into her silence instead of expecting her to reach toward their sound. "Why don't more people know this?" Liam asked his father. "It's like a secret code." "Not everyone needs it," Daniel said. "But Vanessa needs it," Liam replied simply. "So we should know it." The child's logic hit Daniel harder than any lecture ever could. Vanessa signed thank you to Liam, and he beamed like he'd won a prize. These meetings became routine, first 3 times a week, then nearly every day. Daniel would bring his laptop and work on design projects while Vanessa and Liam practiced signs. She taught Liam colors, animals, feelings. Watching his joy at each new word healed something inside her that she hadn't realized was broken. But it wasn't just Liam who was learning. Vanessa taught Daniel signs. Ben had been too young to use complex emotions, abstract ideas, philosophical questions. Their conversations deepened, moving far beyond small talk into real connection. "Why design?" Vanessa asked one afternoon while Liam was in the bathroom. "Control," Daniel signed. When Amy left, everything felt chaotic. "Design lets me create order, beauty, meaning from nothing." "And raising Liam alone?" she asked. "Terrifying," Daniel admitted. "Every day I worry I'm not enough, that he needs a mother, a complete family." "He has a complete family," Vanessa signed firmly. "You're not half a parent just because you're doing it alone." "You sound sure," Daniel replied. "My mom died when I was 6. Vanessa signed. "Car accident. My dad raised me alone. I never felt like I was missing half a family. I felt like I was missing connection." "That's different." Daniel wanted to ask more about her mother, but Liam came back, proudly signing bathroom with a grin. 3 weeks into this new routine, Robert Carter came back from Tokyo. Vanessa had mentioned Daniel and Liam to him, but only vaguely. So when Robert walked into the boulevard one afternoon to surprise his daughter, he wasn't ready for what he saw. His daughter, his quiet, isolated daughter, was laughing. Her hands were flying through the air, in animated conversation with a man and a young boy. The joy on her face was something he hadn't seen in years. Robert froze in the doorway. The man, early 30s, wearing clothes that suggested a creative job rather than corporate life, was signing something that made Vanessa throw her head back in laughter. The boy was copying a sign Vanessa was teaching him, his face scrunched in concentration. Mr. Carter, the cafe manager, murmured at his side. "Would you like your usual table?" "No," Robert said slowly. "No, I'll join my daughter." He walked over, each step heavy with realization. The moment Vanessa saw him, her entire demeanor changed. The brightness drained from her face, her hands dropped to her lap. She became the composed, distant daughter he knew how to handle. "Dad," she said aloud, her voice carrying that slightly off tone of someone who can't quite hear themselves. "Vanessa," he replied, nodding at Daniel and Liam. "I didn't know you had company." Daniel stood and offered his hand. "Daniel Miller, this is my son, Liam." Robert shook hands, his business-trained mind trying to categorize Daniel, not money. The clothes made that clear. Not a business contact, no card. So what was he? "Daddy can't sign," Vanessa said to Daniel in a flat voice. "So we'll have to switch to speaking." "I can translate," Daniel offered. "He doesn't like accommodations," Vanessa signed back. "Makes him feel, what did you call it, Dad? Handicapped by proxy." Robert flinched. "Vanessa, that's not..." "It's exactly what you said," she replied. Then to Daniel, "We should go." "No," Robert said quickly. "Please stay. I'd like to understand." Daniel and Vanessa exchanged a look. She signed something quickly to him, and whatever his response was, made her shoulders relax just a little. "Liam," Daniel said aloud, "why don't you show Mr. Carter what Vanessa taught you today?" Liam lit up. He turned to Robert, hands moving carefully. "Nice to meet you." "I'm learning to talk to Vanessa," he signed. "He says it's nice to meet you," Daniel translated. "He's learning to talk to Vanessa." Robert stared at the boyish child who had known his daughter 3 weeks and could communicate with her better than he could after 23 years. "How long have you been learning?" Robert asked Liam. Liam held up 3 fingers, then signed something else. 3 weeks, Daniel translated. "It's fun, like being a secret agent." 3 weeks, Robert repeated, the words heavy with subtle reproach. "Dad," Vanessa started, but Robert held up his hand. "Show me," he said quietly to Daniel. "Show me how to say hello to my daughter." Daniel looked at Vanessa, who seemed frozen. Slowly, he demonstrated the sign for hello, then daughter. Robert's hands that signed multi-million-dollar contracts and controlled entire boardrooms trembled as he tried to copy the movements. "Hello, daughter," he signed. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. She slowly replied, "Hello, Dad." "What did she say?" Robert asked urgently. "She said, 'Hello, Dad,'" Daniel translated. For a moment, no one moved. Then Robert pulled out a chair and sank into it. 19 years, he said. 19 years since the meningitis, and I never." He swallowed hard. "I hired tutors, interpreters, specialists, but I never." "You never learned yourself," Daniel said gently. "I told myself I was too old, too busy," Robert admitted. "Truth is," he looked at his daughter, "I was terrified of being bad at it." "Fear of failure," Vanessa said out loud, looking at Daniel with recognition. He'd called it weeks ago. "Teach me," Robert said suddenly. "Both of you, teach me. I know I don't deserve." Vanessa reached across the table and grabbed his hand. With her other hand, she signed something Daniel quietly translated. "It's never too late to learn." The lessons started that day. Robert Carter, who commanded boardrooms and controlled millions, became a student at his daughter's table. His hands, unused to this kind of vulnerability, fumbled through basic signs. "No, Dad, like this," Vanessa would sign, gently adjusting his fingers. Each correction was patient and softer, complete reversal of every dynamic they'd ever had. Daniel watched it unfold, translating when needed, but with each week he became less necessary. Robert and Vanessa were building their own bridge. Liam helped too proudly, showing Robert tricks that made signs easier to remember. It felt less like failure when an 80-year-old coach laughed with him instead of at him. "You know what's ironic?" Robert said one evening, 6 weeks into his lessons. "I built my fortune on communication, on reading people, knowing exactly what to say. But with your own daughter, you are speaking different languages." Daniel replied. "No," Robert corrected softly. "That I was the one who was disabled by my pride and my fear." As weeks turned into months, the change in the Carters was profound. Vanessa started to shine, her confidence growing with every conversation she could have directly with her father. Robert became almost unrecognizable, humbled in ways his business associates would never imagine, learning not just sign language, but how to truly see his daughter. The breakthrough came on a rainy Thursday. Robert had been practicing a phrase for days with Daniel, while Vanessa was at her volunteer job at the museum. When she walked into the café, Robert stood up and signed carefully, but clearly. "Vanessa, you are my sunshine. You always have been. I'm sorry it took me so long to tell you." Vanessa froze. Her hands flew to her mouth as tears streamed down her face. "You used my sign, name the one Mum gave me before she died." She signed to Daniel. Daniel translated, and Robert nodded. "I remembered. Your mother used to sign it when you were little, before we lost her." I should have continued. I should have done so many things differently. Liam, who had been quietly drawing at the table, looked up. Is this happy crying or sad crying? He asked. Both, Daniel said and signed. Sometimes they're the same thing. The transformation didn't stop with them. It rippled outward. Robert hired ASL tutors for his entire household staff. He began adding accessibility features to all his properties. In his own words, he became militantly inclusive about communication access in Nashville's business community. I spent 2 decades building walls, he told Daniel one day. Walls of money, walls of ignorance, walls of fear. You and Liam showed me how to build bridges instead. But the most beautiful change was in their relationships. Daniel and Vanessa's connection deepened from friendship into something more. She taught him signs for feelings Ben had been too young to express. Profound grief, unexpected joy, the specific loneliness of single parenthood. He taught her that isolation wasn't her destiny, that she deserved to be chosen, to be someone's priority, not a charity project. You know what I love about you? Vanessa signed one evening as they watched Liam teach Robert the sign for skateboard. My devastating good looks, Daniel signed back with a grin. You never tried to fix me, she continued. Everyone else treated my deafness like a problem to solve. You just saw it as part of who I am. Because it is, he replied. Just like being a single dad is part of who I am. Not broken, just us. Their first kiss happened in sign language before it happened on their lips. Daniel signed, "May I?" Vanessa signed, "Please," and then they closed the distance. Liam was thrilled. "Does this mean Vanessa will be my mum?" he asked with 8-year-old bluntness. "Let's take things slow," Daniel said aloud while signing. But Liam was already signing to Vanessa. "Want to be my mum?" Vanessa laughed, eyes wet, and signed back, "Want to be my son?" "Deal." Liam signed, having learned that word the week before. 1 year after that lonely 23rd birthday, Vanessa celebrated her 24th, surrounded by people who could actually speak her language. The private dining room at the Boulevard was filled, not with her father's business associates making awkward small talk, but with people who had learned to sign for her. There was David, Robert's driver, who'd learned enough to have basic conversations during car rides. There was Sophia, the housekeeper, who now signed "Good morning" and "How are you?" every day. There were museum volunteers who'd started learning after Vanessa began leading sign language tours. And of course, there were Daniel and Liam, the bridge that had connected all of these worlds. Robert stood to give a toast. His signing was still imperfect, but no one cared. Last year, he signed, "I gave you a condo for your birthday. This year, I give you my voice in your language. I give you my promise to never stop learning, to meet you where you are instead of demanding you come to me." He continued, hands growing more confident. "You were never the one who needed to be fixed. I was. You were never the one who was disabled. I was disabled by my inability to see that love means learning someone else's language, literal and figurative." The room was silent except for a few quiet sniffles and the soft sound of tissues. "Also," Robert added, a small smile tugging at his lips, "I'm hoping Daniel will officially become family soon, because I need more help with my homework." Laughter rippled through the room, breaking the tension. Daniel stood and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Vanessa's hands flew to her chest. "Vanessa," he signed, ignoring everyone else. "You taught me that silence isn't empty, it's full of possibility. You showed me that connection isn't about words, but about choosing to understand each other. You brought light back into spaces I thought would stay dark forever." He opened the box to reveal a simple silver ring set with a small sapphire birthstone. "Will you marry me?" he signed. Then, with a grin, "Liam already called dibs on you as his mum, so really, you'd be breaking a child's heart if you say no." Vanessa laughed and cried at the same time as she signed yes over and over, pulling him into a kiss while the room erupted in celebrations, some cheering aloud, others raising their hands in silent deaf applause. Love isn't always spoken. Sometimes it's signed, shown, chosen daily in small acts of bridge building. 2 years later, the Bridge Communication Center stood as a testament to what connection can build. The non-profit, founded by Vanessa and Daniel with Robert's backing, provided free sign language classes to families, schools, and businesses. The building's walls were glass transparent, open, barrier-free, revolutionary in their simplicity. "We had our grand opening today," Vanessa signed to Daniel as they stood in the quiet lobby after everyone had gone. 300 people came. "Ben would have loved this," Daniel signed. "He does love it." Vanessa corrected. His love for you started all of this. Every sign you teach, every connection made here, it's his legacy too. Liam, now 11 and fully bilingual in English and ASL, ran in from the parking lot where Robert was waiting. Grandpa says, hurry up or we'll miss our reservation, Liam called. Grandpa needs to learn patience, Vanessa signed with a smile. I can see you signing about me, Robert called from the doorway, his own signs smoother now. And I am patient. I waited 19 years to learn to talk to my daughter properly. 20, Vanessa corrected with a teasing grin. But who's counting? I am, Robert signed seriously. I count every lost year as motivation to never waste another day. They walked out together, a millionaire grandfather still practicing I love you without trembling, a boy who slipped between languages without thinking, a woman who'd found her voice in silence, and a man who had discovered that the skills we carry for people we've lost sometimes lead us exactly where we're meant to be. Behind them, the Bridge Communication Center waited for tomorrow's classes. 50 more families would start learning to communicate across silence. 50 more bridges would begin construction. But tonight was for family, for celebration, for the kind of birthday dinner Vanessa once only imagined. She was now surrounded by people who didn't just tolerate her language, but embraced it, who saw her deafness not as a barrier, but as part of the beautiful complexity of who she was. You know what the best gift is? Vanessa signed to Daniel as they drove to the restaurant. What? He signed back at a red light. Second chances, she replied. My father got a second chance to be my dad. You got a second chance to use your signs. I got a second chance to believe I was worth learning for. And me, Liam chimed in from the back seat. Their son signed proudly. I got a mum who teaches me that different doesn't mean less. Robert, watching from the passenger seat, added, and I learned it's never too late to learn a new language, especially when it's the language of someone you love. The light turned green, and they drove on, a family formed not by perfection, but by the choice to keep building bridges, one sign at a time. Years from that first lonely birthday, Vanessa would look back and marvel at the chain of small decisions that changed everything. A single dad choosing to approach a stranger, a child eager to learn, a father finally facing his fear. Tiny acts of connection that rippled outward until hundreds of families could speak across silence. But in that moment, riding to dinner with her family, she wasn't thinking about impact or legacy. She was simply present, watching her husband sign a joke to their son, seeing her father laugh at something he could finally understand, feeling that warm, solid weight of belonging she'd once believed impossible. The millionaire's daughter, who had once spent her birthday alone, had become a woman surrounded by love, not because someone fixed her or saved her, but because someone saw her, chose her, and decided her language was worth learning.